welcome to another broadcast of what are we broadcasting today? Let's be real. Let's be real. And that has a sign that goes with it. And the sign is, it's actually let's be healed, but we're going to be real because that's the destination. And today it felt to talk about growth and to approach it pretty open-handedly, like let's see where it goes. Oh, hey, welcome. While we're getting organized, let's take a few breaths. So with growth, should I take the breaths I suggested? Let's see, where do we want to go today? Growth will happen whether or not, hi, welcome. Growth will happen, I think, regardless of your participation in it. Kind of like a tree or a weed will just grow. And yet you do have the opportunity to cultivate that growth in a positive, intentional direction. We can grow more resentful, we can grow more resistant, we can grow closed-er, or we can grow towards love and our highest and greatest expression. And what has been so incredible being a part of this conversation, the conversation of consciousness, for several years now, is that I've met people all over the world that are exploring similar topics in their own ways, and we've kind of got to watch each other grow. And to me, where you're growing towards is what has always been you. So you are pruning essentially that which is unessential, that which is learned, that which hides what is truly you and your joy. When the past couple weeks I've been emphasizing that things are both at the same time, and growth and perfection are examples of that, where we think like, well, if we're already perfect, why will we change? Why will we grow? Well, things can always iterate, seemingly, especially because the environment that they're contained in is changing. And so what is perfect in one moment relative to the environment may not be perfect in the next. And also we're alive, which seems to include some level of movement, even again in stillness. So if you're just joining today, I'm talking about growth. And to me, if you're on the path, if you're consciously choosing to grow what you're growing towards, while you may identify different achievements that could be representative of growth, I want to run a marathon, I want to be this type of presence with my children, I want to offer this at the workplace, the sensation that you're still trending towards what you're looking for is the you, like the real you. And that it's kind of like a clearing process. And what you're clearing are the ways that you've learned to behave, speak, think, that don't serve what's natural to you. And once you get to what's natural to you, then it's a more collaborative process. You're kind of like holding hands with you, and you're like, well, honey, where do you want to go? What are we going to do? Let's see. You show me. It's almost like the parent-child relationship, but in a way where the best of both worlds are bringing into being creative vision, love, connection, innocence. And it's not clouded by, again, the conditioning that hid what is truly and uniquely yours. And going back to the idea that there are sometimes like, how can this be at the same time? How can you be perfect and grow? How can you be spiritual and function in this reality? Man, that's a tough one. that's a tough one, because to me it's multifaceted, and that you're answering that question for yourself, but in many ways you're also answering it for the collective, and that your kind of influence and desires are shifting the landscape that we're operating in. The systems that govern our modern lives are weird, man, and they don't really make sense. And the more that you come into what is natural and what is true for you, the easier it is to be like, well, what's with the food here? What's with this work-life balance? And then you're still kind of asking yourself to be true to what is comfortable for you, and yet you're seeing these constraints. Well, how can I afford organic? How can I assert authenticity in these places, in these ways? And there, the growth that is required or asked from my vantage point is to become still mentally and learn to allow changes that aren't under your control. So yesterday or the day before, I presented on shadow work and emotional healing, and I said that many of the things that you're healing are actually beliefs, and the beliefs are what prevent what's natural from you from can you guys hear me all right? I just had a battery notification, and sometimes that jolts the audio away from the video. So if I could get a confirmation from the crowd, and I'll keep going in the interim. These beliefs, that's conditioning. Where was I? 20% battery left. That's where I was. Let's see. Conditioning, I was talking about the layers. Oh, the idea of the self. Okay, thank you so much. The idea of the self is learned. It's invisible. And the concept of self creates problems where there aren't. And it creates this idea, the ego. And to me, the ego is it's essentially a concept of yourself that you develop, you record and develop simultaneously, and it's never correct. How you see yourself is never correct. And that idea of yourself, it's almost like you carry a trading card, and on the back of the trading card you have these little notes about what your character can do. And they're not correct, and you try to stay consistent with this character card, and you hit walls, you can't go places, you don't do things, because this isn't who you are. This is just some notes. This is just a collection of notes that you have. And one of the ways that we behave per our beliefs is to create almost like worth points through accomplishment, through differentiation, through suffering. We'll take on these different stories, not necessarily actions, but these different stories to validate, oh, see, I'm worthy of having this. I suffered the most. I sweat the most. I bled the most. I can be happy in a relationship now. I can. And all of those ideas of what is required to realize certain visions, many of them are learned. And it's not to say that isn't your real experience, and it's not to say that someone can't take or won't take that path. It's only to say that often we project difficulty onto the path because we learned or heard that things are supposed to be hard, and that things are supposed to be hard, again, is some ways what our culture has created to justify our being, to justify being here. The idea that everybody can have kind of can be unsettling to the psyche at first, because it's well, but what about me? How am I special? If we can all do this, if we can all be great, if we can all hurt the most, how will I be special? And a lot of the stuff I've been putting out recently as well is you got to give those to you. Those things are inside. And when you bring them inside and you start to see oh, I'm special to me because I love me. I am witnessing my challenges. I am celebrating where I am growing. I am with me. I am with me. Then you're not seeking it. And when you're not seeking it, you actually bring home a lot of power and freedom, because you're not asking silly questions like, what are they going to think about this? And those silly questions sometimes register consciously, but often they're just operating in the background. So I was talking about with growth and being kind of a harbinger, is that the right word? A harbinger of new possibilities in the world that is. So let's just to recap, I was saying in growth, if you're on the path and you're starting to see like, well, how can I be true to myself if I have to pay my bills and this person's my mom? Like, how am I supposed to bring these things together? And what I'm suggesting is space and allowing and intention and breathing. So the first two I mentioned already, where there is space and allowing. So that means that you take it off your desk to figure out how you're going to take this dynamic, this situation, and bring it over here. Your job instead is to drop it from your mind and instead come deeper into your body and allow it to be done for you. And that topic led me down the path of like, well, we have this idea of the self, and the idea of the self wants to be the one responsible for change. It wants to think it's controlling things so that it feels safe, because it's like, hey, buddy, I'm in charge. I made all this happen. That was one of my most fun discoveries, where I was doing all these like backflips on the inside. And it was like, I'd run behind the backflip and try to explain how I made it happen. And eventually I realized it was happening on its own, and I was just describing it after the fact in a way that was kind of convincing. Does that mean I wasn't an active participant? No, I absolutely was an active participant. I was an active participant in the vision, in the willingness, in the intention. But the actual orchestration of change at these levels is a little bit bigger than the self. And so in allowing space for things to move, basically what you're doing is being present in joy instead of in your head trying to figure out, which is really our destination anyhow. And through that presence, in some ways you offer that as a demonstration to the people around you, and also I think vibrationally, and that it can kind of remind people what it feels like not to be caught up in what they think is going on. It's crazy when you start to see how many of your thoughts, assumptions, pillars of your reality are unreal, and unreal in that you learned to call something this way, interpret it this way, but there are so many other ways for it to be or be called or be seen. And so it's almost like we're all sitting around a play. It's a stage play, and no one was given any brochures. There's not a title. There's nothing. We're just sitting out here watching this action, and all of us are having our own kind of experience of the action based on what the life we've lived to that point. And so you see people fighting and you think like, oh, they're going to reconcile. Other people see fighting and they're like, must be hungry. We're all watching this central thing, having our own very personal experience of it. And that's beautiful, and at the same time can create a lot of problems, because the assumptions that we have in our viewership don't occur to us as assumptions, they occur to us as reality, and we don't then bring them to the conversations when we're problem solving, because it's like, well, why would you say what obviously is? Well, it's not. If it was, then we kind of get along, you know what I'm saying? So with growth, the intention and the vision is so cool, and that it becomes a dance rather than being on the sidelines and you're saying like, okay, how can I make this happen here? You get into the music and you work with it, and life does something, you do something, and it kind of happens like this. And things evolve. It's so cool. And when I'm putting these things out in the broadcast, what I'm saying is like, this is what I've seen. I'm really grateful to say that I am finally able to be with and validate the dedication I've had to this topic. I have been living and breathing being and consciousness for years now, and really making it my full-time job to see what is seen and to be able to articulate my experience and bring others to their own. And some of that was so natural to me. I never was like, I didn't recognize, I wasn't really able to say for myself like, wow, this is real, because it was happening with so many other things. And I say that because, okay, I was saying like, hey, I'm going to put this out here. I have clocked a lot of hours. At the same time, you are having your own experience. And the only thing I want to assert as actual and fact is that I do believe that I trust your experience, and I believe that you can do it how you're called and inspired to do it. Is it going to be the way that I'm doing it? I don't know, but it can be done, essentially. That's what I'm offering. And let's say with growth, okay, so what I was talking about with growth is like for, this sort of like spiritual reality, thing that we're doing, if you're awakening at this time, I'll say like it's uncomfortable, it's weird, it's really weird to see things, feel things, and then turn around and participate in a reality that isn't built, or systems rather, that's not built on that awareness. And so there is disconnect. It's like you're walking kind of on uneven surfaces, and accepting and validating that's uncomfortable can help you make it more comfortable, because then you're not denying your experience and you're not afraid of it. And what I'm saying is like to kind of bring these in balance, the piece we want to pull out and shift from the old paradigm, from the old system, is the idea of I, these ideas of control. And you do that by making space, and you make space through breathing. In breathing, and you're relaxing, and you're being present, and you are not necessarily visualizing, but intending like, oh man, I'd love for this dynamic to feel more balanced. I would love to be heard more at work. I would love for the grocery store here to offer more affordable, healthy food. Like, know what you want, because I think that when you have that gap, the inclination is to basically explain, talk about it, make it a problem, use it for the differentiation, the self-importance I was talking about earlier on your little character card, where it's like, well, I know, I want, I like, and this is not that. And a lot of the people that are realizing the new world, from my vantage point, have gotten there because they were different. And sometimes I'm different goes on the character card, and that prevents them from finding their tribe, because they like to be different on some level. And so they keep that written, and they're like, well, I'm the only one here that gets it. Well, that's because, honey, on one level, you want to be the only one there who gets it. And so it's allowing yourself to put down the character card in many ways. And again, just be present, be with your body, breathe, be what's here, perceive, allow yourself to make new choices. When you take it up top to your head and you start to make it a really manual process, all you're really doing is replicating the old paradigm with like new material. It's like same tricks, new pony, essentially. And wow, and like there's no shame there, no judgment. Like, I wouldn't know about it if I didn't do it. You know what I'm saying? So it is still just this process of acceptance, and always coming back to here, now, as I am, in love, acceptance. If you aren't accepting, if you're judging, accept that you're judging, accept that you're not accepting. with growth, which is what I opened today, what I wanted to talk about, is it doesn't have to be as effortful. It really does seem to happen naturally, and your job is really, like I said, to cultivate it. You're not supposed to sit, outside the potted plant and be like, oh, duh, it's not growing, why, do all the, it grows when it grows. You might be able to find actions you can take for the environment that it finds itself in, but like the actual growing of it isn't necessarily under your control. And again, like at a conditional level, yes, at an intention level, yes, it is collaborative, it is participatory, but it isn't something that, like, it sometimes that pressure to grow, to change, to evolve, to embody, to heal, etc., takes you out of the point. Because again, what's the point? Well, the point's to enjoy your fucking life. It's so simple. That's where you're trying to go. You're trying to go to a place where you feel comfortable as yourself, that you're taken care of, that you're fruitful, that you're flourishing. All of that happens, and all of that would happen so that you felt like you could enjoy your life. So you have enjoy your life, be happy, beyond all of these obstacles, but you can pull it back behind the obstacles as you realize and transcend them. The journey is to that, to here, to the awareness, to the choice that you always have, which is like, what do I want to make this? And sometimes that choice feels more in-house, and sometimes it feels less. And then you have the choice about that experience and say, like, will I say yes to this? Will I let this be okay? And that's a simplification. I understand there's body chemistry. I understand there are other things that are happening. And at the same time, it does seem like behind most things is still belief and intention. And the perceptual environment, I talked about this a little bit this week, is really interesting. That's the primary environment that you exist in. Your perceptual environment is basically, what meaning are you assigning to things? How are you interpreting life? Who do you think you are? And that perceptual environment influences what your body does. There's a book by Bruce Lipton, Dr. Bruce Lipton, that talks about that. And there's a lot of material about it now. I think epigenetics covers it in some ways. And, we're on the edge of science, and that science likes to say, like, reliably, I can measure this, reliably, I know. And that's beautiful. Thanks, science. At the same time, like, there are things that exist. I should spend some time with quantum theory so that I can speak to wave particle stuff more and better. But, like, seemingly, the foundations of science are like, it is and it isn't. And so is it fair or helpful to rope in our experience based on what is reliable? In some ways, yes, absolutely yes. I've existed in the wild, I've existed in chaos. You can't do much there. You do need reason. You do need, like, there is a beauty to having some kind of, like, ground. And at the same time, there seems to be something that is more than that. And how can you bring those pieces in harmony? And that's kind of like this growth piece where it's like, well, there's a gap here. Like, how am I supposed to be intuitive and also function? How am I supposed to, well, it seems, again, to see like they're not really in opposition, and to make space for them to harmonize through your intention. Okay, I am going to wrap up. Does anyone have any thoughts, feelings, comments, questions before we close today? I work with clients one-to-one to help them realize the awareness of their own power, connect to their own guidance, clear out the junk that's not them. And I do that mostly in package format. It's called Entourage, and I'll create and lead a structure, a change structure, a transformation structure intuitively, and each week or two we chip away at that and help you step into a higher expression of yourself. I also work with clients in a single session model where they might say like, well, I got this one thing I know I need to do, or I want clarity here or help here. And that's so more of like an isolated type support. You can book those or info calls for free on my website, haveabook.com/transform, or look for the link in my bio. And I would really super appreciate subscribing, liking, comment on YouTube. My channel is at Shaylee Edwards, and I'm also intending to be, I would love to be a thought leader, to be quite honest, on LinkedIn, because I think it would be fun. And to me, that means influencing leadership in corporate structures that create environments that other people live in, and then that filter down to their kids, that filter out through the community, which will rise up into, thank you so much, that will rise up into the leadership. And so it's super exciting for me to impact people who impact, and the impact that I want to have is really just self-love tools, where it's like, hey babe, like, you're good. Like, let's realize that fear. Let's take that fear and turn it into love. Let's trust your individuality. Let's trust your okayness. Even if you did fucked up stuff, like, let's bring you whole in your wholeness where you are, so that you can offer that to other people, and we can work together to make this world a little nicer for everybody. Thank you so much for everybody coming out. This was an interesting time of day for me. Wasn't expecting so many folk. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Yeah. YouTube.com/The Shaylee Show, or at Shaylee Edwards. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that, guys.